let me tell you about Flock.
The controversial cameras that are being used in the widespread surveillance, and which now blanket the country, have sparked heated outrage.
It built an always-on, always-watching, interconnected surveillance network right here in the land of the free.
I've spent the past year investigating Flock. I've spoken with experts that have hacked its cameras, who have invented new ways of mapping them, who have found innovative ways to hide from them, and who are trying to use the government to remove them. Also, to my surprise, very end of filming this video, Flock's own CEO agreed to sit down with me, but we'll have more on that later. This Flock story can get people riled up. It seems like people feel as though they've been fooled.
Put them here so people don't speed past the school and kill one of these kids, and now they're all over the city. Before you know it, you have 100 different cameras in a medium-sized town, and nobody can go anywhere without being tracked.
Since the start of last year, when Flock really started to get attention, at least 30 towns have ripped their Flock cameras out. All across the country, the town halls are overflowing with people protesting Flock. And some are simply starting to take matters into their own hands.
And so, here it is. Everything you need to know about Flock. Who's watching?
Founded in 2017, Flock has gone from a side project in an Atlanta area garage to a multi-billion-dollar company with over 80,000 cameras across 49 states in the US.
Flock claims it's a public safety technology provider, giving communities the tools they need to solve crime while putting them in control of their data. Its critics say they're a venture capital-funded surveillance system that has trouble securing data and preventing abuse.
Flock aren't the only ALPRs, or automated license plate readers, or even the only ones that allow searches across its national database. What is different about Flock is the speed at which it has grown, the size it has reached, and the new places it has pushed surveillance. The company claims it reads 20 billion license plates a month for more than 5,000 communities and over 4,800 police departments.
Even when Flock is used as designed by the police in the investigation of a crime, it can flag the wrong person, forcing someone who did nothing wrong to prove it, as happened in Columbine Valley, Colorado.
A cop comes to a woman's door and says, "We have you on camera stealing a package. Now put yourself in her shoes." And you did not steal that package. Like, what? One of the quotes that he said was,
"You know we have cameras in that town and you can't get a breath of fresh air in or out of that place without us knowing, correct?"
How scary is that? And he said it unironically.
And it doesn't stop at local law enforcement. Federal agencies such as ICE can use partners in police departments to access footage as well. Even if local laws prohibit coordination with federal officials, all it takes is one officer to look up footage and share it.
What's the argument for Flock?
And here's the annoying thing about surveillance that no one really wants to say. It sometimes can be useful. Flock claims it helped in 10% of successful criminal investigations across the US and was used in over 700,000 cases annually. But these studies are funded by Flock.
Even one of the academic researchers who worked with Flock on these studies later told 404 Media, "I personally would have done things much differently."
So, Flock could be useful to law enforcement.
But can the rest of us trust Flock employees with more than 80,000 cameras across the country?
So first of all, some Flock employees were logging in as police officers. Like they would sort of on record deputize themselves and then use it that way.
Ben Jordan has become one of the leading experts on Flock and has investigated many of its security vulnerabilities.
One of them, probably the most troubling, was in a children's gymnastics studio. There's audit logs where Flock employees, who have nothing to do with the technical aspects of Flock, they're like sales managers, logged in to look at the gymnastics room and then logged out, and that was their activity for the day.
And Flock employees aren't the only ones abusing the network.
A police officer is caught using police cameras to spy on his mistress.
Former Milwaukee police officer pleading guilty today. Josue Ayala searched the locations of his girlfriend and her boyfriend more than 170 times using Milwaukee Police Department's license plate reading technology.
This is bad enough, but Ben's research shows us that Flock is not only vulnerable to internal misuse, but also external manipulation.
So the first Flock security video I made,
we got some and we hacked them. You can press a button a few times on the back of these cameras and within a few minutes, turn them into your own personal spy device.
And then, of course, as predicted, when that video came out, Flock claimed that the cameras I had were not the same as the cameras that were on the poles. The other ones have security updates. None of the stuff, everything I did was a magic trick. Flock has never been hacked. The actual Flock systems on the poles have never been compromised. I can actually get into these systems without breaking any law. I could just do it by searching Flock admin with quotes on it, the search engine, and then find 80 cameras.
So cameras that often scan thousands of license plates every day were broken into by security researchers in roughly 30 seconds.
To be fair, Flock says this was due to a misconfiguration it has since fixed, and nearly all its clients now use multi-factor authentication.
So this just came in after reporting, but 404 Media found that Flock's freeform search feature can be used to find and track not just cars, but people. Officers can query things like tattoos, body build, and clothing. Searches that use race and ethnicity are supposed to flag alerts, but 404 Media found evidence of them being used anyway. This is quite an expansion from Flock being just another license plate reader. Okay, back to the show. Can you avoid Flock? This is the $100 million question. Is it possible to live in America and actually avoid these cameras? YouTuber Chris Parr, otherwise known as Chris the Producer, tried to do just that.
So I wanted to put these things to the test and see what it actually would take to live my life relatively normally for a week without being discovered by a single surveillance camera.
Chris's efforts grew increasingly outlandish, from trying to simply avoid the cameras,
Hey, it's me.
to disguising himself, to creating an elaborate invisibility device.
So I thought there's gotta be a way. I basically have terminal back pain and was accused of being in the KKK.
Oh my God, no.
It's impossible to avoid surveillance. That seems like a crazy statement, right?
If you need to strap a flat screen to your back to go to the store in privacy, I think we've taken a wrong turn.
I don't know what the answer is, but I know that Flock cameras are not it.
Can you locate Flock cameras?
Turns out, yes, more than you'd think.
I wouldn't create the map because just like telling people, hey, there are cameras all around you, tracking me every move, they're going to think you're like a crazy person. They're not going to actually believe you.
This is Will Freeman. Will created the open source project DFlock. DFlock allows anyone to report, verify, and look up the location of Flock cameras.
If you can show them on a map, like you pass about 10 of these on your way to work, or you pass like 5 of them on the way to like the grocery store, that puts things into perspective so they can make that judgment for themselves.
The response from Flock's CEO to DFlock? He called it terroristic, a website that maps the cameras that maps you.
To be fair, CEO Garrett Langley did later walk that statement back, calling it a mistake, but only after several months.
The goal is to get rid of these things. Talk to your city council member, whatever you care about, tell them why you don't like them. These are new, these are easy to stop, and these are much, much harder to opt out of than other things that trap us. So it's kind of important that we do it now.
Can you fight it? All over America, it seems like people are turning on Flock. Just like data centers, Flock cameras have caused a massive uptick in explosive town hall debates across the country.
But under Flock, every time we get into our cars, we are all under investigation at all times for all crimes.
To invade and spy on our communities. A monument to fear, voyeurism, and delusion.
The Linwood City Council voting yes to cut ties with Flock Safety and its surveillance camera systems.
In Asheville, North Carolina, mayoral candidate Kim Roney is running on an anti-Flock platform.
The move to resist against Flock technology is nonpartisan. I have neighbors who are Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians. It is definitely a unifying issue that people are concerned about local elected officials and their representatives protecting their constitutional rights, their right to not have warrantless searches, their privacy, and their safety.
Hey, it's me again with another update. The Los Angeles Police Department has decided to let its Flock contract lapse in July 2026 over data privacy and civil rights concerns. The department said it's not going to use footage from any of the 138 cameras it has installed, but it's not going to remove them either, and it's actively negotiating with Flock for a new contract with better data controls. During the making of this film, we'd extended an open invite to Garrett Langley, Flock's CEO, to talk with us. And just as we were finishing up, and much to my delight, he agreed to sit with us and answer a couple of questions. You can find the entire unedited interview on our blog. We had limited time with him, so I tried to focus on some of Flock's biggest claims, how local control works, and how it prevents abuse. So I started off by asking, who has control of Flock devices, the communities or Flock?
Can Flock change a deployed product's capability through a software update without a city council or a public approving that new capability?
At the core of our business relationship, right? Whether it's with a neighborhood or a business or a city, as you can look at our contracts, it's a an annual contract, right? And every year we need to prove our value. And so there is an expectation from our customers that it's getting better every single day.
Right. However, you can see how this would lead to mission creep. There was a recent report in 404 Media where briefly your ALPR cameras were turned into live feed cameras. There was another report in the EFF where your acoustic gunshot monitoring system was used briefly to monitor for screams for human distress. In both of these cases, it appears as though these features were added without any addendum to the contract, without any new kind of consultation with the city council.
Yeah, so I think more broadly, if we zoom out, two things I think are true. One, right, we do have to continue to build a better product being both more safety, more privacy, more accountability. What we're not in the business of doing, though, is mandating to our customers what they use and what they don't use. And so as an example, we launched our audit assistance tool about a month and a half ago, right? It's an additional functionality to detect potentially abusive or nefarious behavior in our system. We don't require that today. Now, more than a third of our customers have turned it on, and we push our customers, you should use this, you should use this. But I believe it's city council's job, commissioner's job to push them to drive for more accountability. And I'd say the same on the safety side.
Since recording, Flock has announced they're going to require all agencies to use their audit assistance feature, which includes a proactive lockout for officers that conduct unusual searches until there's an administrative review. 2 weeks ago, Garrett told me that Flock isn't in the business of mandating features. Now, something's changed. Wasn't a council vote, but there have been more canceled contracts and more bad press. And Flock has made these audits harder for the public to use by removing the names of officers and plates searched, along with other information, from the records shared.
How many contracts with police departments has Flock suspended or terminated because of systemic abuse, rampant abuse by officers and your system?
Yeah, I think it's a really, really interesting question. And it's interesting because every day, as an example, I see at least 3, if not 4, success stories of an abducted child being returned home. I see hundreds to thousands of crimes being solved. If I lived in a town that had a police department that was abusing Flock, the last thing I'd want to do is rip out this system that's so effective at actually solving crime. And so the abuse you're talking about is exceptionally rare. Now, to my point, anything greater than 0 is unacceptable. But you're talking about hundreds of thousands of police officers who use Flock every single day, and single-digit number, dozens that are potentially abusing it. Like, I don't think you should hold the entire city accountable for just the bad decisions of a few.
In August, the Washington Post reported that 50 police officers were found guilty or charged with stalking or misusing license plate readers. And out of those cases, 46 involved Flock.
If I can infer from that answer, I would say the number is 0.
I don't want to misrepresent an answer.
So Garrett has spoken on this more directly before. Speaking with Forbes, he said, "I don't think it's our job to police the police. Flock's own Trust Center says if a violation is found, the agency will enforce its disciplinary rules, and there's no public record of Flock ever cutting an agency off."
Would you support requiring explicit public approval before a materially new surveillance capability can be enabled on a technology that's already been implemented in the community?
100%. Like, I feel quite strongly that police departments are simply one part of a local government. And those local governments have policies. And most of those local governments have policies around not just surveillance, but budgetary items too. And we should continue to rely on our locally elected officials to make these trade-offs of how we keep the community safe.
Not to put words in your mouth, but it would appear as though you would, if you're willing to support this, it would mean potentially going to city council before introducing a new feature and not simply rolling it out, pushing it out. Is that correct?
If a police department chooses to add a feature, I also have to rely on that customer to understand their community values, their policies, their procedures. So at a high level, 100%.
So I get the point about local ownership, but it seems like a bit of a dodge. What if the city council approved a Flock contract, but just for one type of camera, and then Flock unilaterally changed what those cameras can do with the software update? City council would have approved one thing and then gotten another. And it seems like it really should be Flock's responsibility to tell the city rather than the city just trying to find out by monitoring the situation.
You say one of Flock's safeguards is local control, but multiple towns in California claim their data was shared with outside parties, sometimes with the federal government, without their permission. How is this consistent with your claim that customers control their data?
I disagree with those statements.
Okay. I can tell you that I got this from a claim from Mountain View, California. They claim that Flock enabled a nationwide search with police departments without their permission, and federal agencies then accessed the data. And similarly, South Pasadena cited inadvertent data sharing as a reason why they canceled its contract. One was reported in The Guardian, the other was simply a statement from the city. Yeah.
Customers control their data. They control what checkboxes are selected. If anything, we misunderstood our obligation to our customers to make it impossible for them to make mistakes. And so if you take someone like California, there is state legislation that LPR data should not leave the state. We didn't view it as our job to codify that into our product 2 years ago. Now, as we've heard from customers who inadvertently either clicked a button or someone clicked a button and said, hey, we actually want to turn on national lookup, we made that too easy for them.
The Flock blog makes it clear that what happened in Mountain View and South Pasadena, California weren't isolated incidents. They have a post saying, "We sincerely regret the confusion and mistrust we created in several communities, and we take full accountability for what happened in Ventura, California, where out-of-state agencies accessed the county sheriff's data over 364,000 times."
So now in the state of California, in the state of Washington, state of Virginia, where there is clear legislation that LPR data cannot leave the state, we make it impossible for that to happen. There's not even a checkbox. And so if anything, Richie, the way I would describe it is Flock's obligation in this conversation has gone up. I view our responsibility greater, which is why I'm such a big fan of regulation in general. Because now in a place like Washington, there's a bill that says, this is how we think LPR should work in Washington. And when those bills are well written, not necessarily on the substance, but in the enforceability, I think that's a great thing. And so in a place like California, we've now changed and increased our stature such that it is impossible for that to even happen.
The thing that stuck out most to me in my talk with Garrett was how often this multi-billion-dollar company makes preventing mission creep and abuse the responsibility of these local communities. I mean, yes, that's partly local ownership, but it's also a mismatch between power and accountability. Flock created this platform. It develops the features. It designs the safeguards. Meanwhile, more and more people, communities, and police departments are deciding they've had enough of Flock. In Dayton, Ohio, city workers went out and put trash bags over the cameras. It turns out when you start watching the watchers, the people can speak up for themselves.